So, and I stressed over that. Working with UVic, thank you, Peter. Working with UVic, they set up, after we set up the Knowledge Mobilization Unit, UVic set up the Office of Community-Based Research. And Bud Hall runs that, and you've done quite a bit of work with Bud. And I was stressing, going, what's the difference between community-based research or participatory action research and knowledge mobilization? They are opposite sides of the same coin. They're both change-oriented. What I come down to realize, and Bud agrees with me, we have also wonderful community-based researcher at York, Sarah Flicker, who works in HIV/AIDS, always with the community, is that community-based research is KM. You can't do community-based research without mobilizing that knowledge to affect change. But you can do KM that isn't community-based research. Yeah. So, for example, a university that is, we've got a project on doing plain language research summaries, that is pushing those summaries out. That's KM, but that's not community-based research. If a question comes from the government, say, and is looking at tax legislation, and they'd like an academic and a grad student to work with them on that, that wouldn't be community-based research, but that would be KM. So, CBR is inherently KM, but KM is a bigger picture than just community-based research.
David?
Right? So dissemination means the scattering of seeds. Okay. So if you think about it as a system, so if your role within that system is only as an academic, the only place you need to scatter those seeds are in peer-reviewed journals for your subdiscipline. Right?
And that's not wrong.
And that's not wrong. It just means that's your particular role within a system. But if you think about dissemination in a systems perspective, if you're scattering seeds, you have to think about the soil that they're going to be received upon. Right? So if it's rock and clay, it's not going to have the effect. Once the seeds are sown, you have to nurture their growth. And then as they grow, you have to think about what the harvest is, who's going to be doing the harvesting, what are the conditions of the marketplace. And I'm using it as a metaphor, but where you are in that role, you may play a singular role, right? As a researcher, you may play multiple roles within it. There are very few people who are excellent academics and excellent knowledge mobilizers at the same time. I can think of a half dozen of them, but they tend to be the leaders of worldwide networks, right? They're really stars. There's very few of them. Right? So again, it comes down to what is the role that you want to play within it. I'm not a great researcher. I never intended to be. And it was actually not the direction that I wanted to go in. Except that I understand enough of research that I can help people who need research to understand how it can be implemented and utilized within their context so that they can do what they're doing better.
I got job descriptions of knowledge brokers, knowledge directors, managers of knowledge transfer coordinators, mostly from Ontario because I'm part of a knowledge transfer and exchange community of practice in Ontario. And I got 10 of these, and I just did a quick little analysis and a breakdown of what these look like. And there are some commonalities to these, because these are newly evolving positions, and so it's important to really try and determine, especially for you guys who are thinking of future careers, what might a career like this look like? This is interesting. The job descriptions all require between 3 and 10 years of experience in knowledge transfer and exchange. Oh dear. Nobody has 10 years experience in this. But it was really interesting, these job descriptions. 3 to 10 years experience, previous experience. Communications was a big piece of almost all the job descriptions. Being able to communicate clearly, multiple stakeholder groups. And that boundary span, or being able to be comfortable in different environments. Usually, but not always, wasn't needing a master's degree or equivalent. Some of them were looking for PhDs. So usually, but not always, a master's degree or more. One thing that was really interesting, because we talk about it all the time in knowledge mobilization, but we clearly aren't requiring it, is there was a complete lack of evaluation capacity. Nobody noted the need to be able to have skills in evaluation. And all of us, whenever we get together, I'm sure you guys do too, talk about how are we going to evaluate this? But we never actually put it in anyone's job description, which is probably why we're still asking how are we going to evaluate it. So that was a piece that I noticed was missing. But a piece that I pulled out, it wasn't explicit, was this need to improvise. This need to be kind of, you wouldn't put this in a job description, but need to be comfortable working in an ambiguous environment. And that's really a need. And if you're working in a graduate level program, you're already improvising. You're already comfortable seeing things that aren't there and moving towards them or finding them. And so when you start thinking about the skill set that you actually have, it's amazing that you've got some of these tools. You just don't actually think about it. So now I'm going to talk about someone else's story. Krista Jensen. She's also at York. She's a knowledge mobilization officer, so I'm hugely privileged to have been able to get the money. So I've got 2 full-time people brokering relationships between the university and organizations outside. Krista came from, she's got a master's in information studies, so she's a librarian. And she worked at the Alpha Plus Center where Michael had worked, so at the community, a community literacy place, and she also works at the library at the CNIB. So again, someone who's come from the community perspective, but she had a master's, so she was comfortable with research and what knowledge creation was like. She's comfortable working in community, but really interesting. I'd never actually thought to work with librarians before, but any library studies, information studies folks? Awesome. You think different than the rest of us, you know? And it's a really important way of thinking. It's a way of organizing information. And she handles a lot of our back office stuff. She's not actually that comfortable wanting to be out in the community, and that's okay, but she handles our website, our blog, our RefWorks, our all of our documents. It's a wonderful way, and she knows the technology. And librarians aren't librarians anymore, they're data specialists. Would that be true?
That's true.
Yeah? Do you find in your role that you see opportunities like this?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah? So librarians. And so she came in also having this experience of community, but working in the university. And, you know, when I put my other hat on of tech transfer, a tech transfer manager is often someone who has got skills, they've worked in a company or they've worked in venture capital and they've got a PhD or they've got an MBA. So, you know, there are some analogies. They break down really quickly when you think of technology transfer and knowledge mobilization. It's on the, there's a, gee, no, this is good. It's on the memory stick. I wanted to come back to your question about, well, where does it happen?
But I think the key point though is to change your thinking so that you're thinking within a system, right? And you know, one of the most significant work, you know, in business it's called knowledge management, and one of the most important works is the work of Peter Senge, right? The 5th discipline, organizational learning, and you know, all of the work that kind of goes around with that. But the first discipline around organizational learning is systems thinking. It's thinking about what you're doing within a system. And you may have multiple roles, or you may have a very broad role, or you may have a very specific role. And it's not that one is above or below the other in a hierarchy, but that they're related to one another. And if those relationships aren't created, hence the need for people to broker those relationships, then the value of what's there is not fully realized. And I think that's a really important thing.